All right. Thank you for being here with me today. I'm excited to help share your story and your experience with gastroparesis. So, I will give you a moment to introduce yourself to our audience and let you get started on sharing what you've been through.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. When you reached out to me a couple weeks ago and just asked for my patient story as well as additional patient stories with
Mhm.
gastroparesis, it really meant a lot to me. I was really excited to be on here just because I know all of us have a very unique, interesting story that really selfishly needs to be shared with the world. And
Yes.
I'm excited to hear the yeah. I'm excited to hear the additional patient stories as well. It helps me triangulate what I've been through. It helps me validate everything that I've experienced or, normalize this very unnormal
Mhm.
condition. And so today I just want to share my personal story with gastroparesis. So, hi, my name is Helena Seward, and in April of 2021, my life changed in the most unexpected way possible. So, 3 days after I get my first COVID shot, I had a completely normal day. I remember it was a Monday. I was working from home because it was still COVID times, and I logged off. I went to the gym, went to CrossFit, and had a really good workout, and I was really into my macros, wanted to add all the protein I could, and I remember I started eating a bunch of Costco chicken and Brussels sprouts, which I
Oof.
think all of us are probably feeling in our stomach right now. I was really into Brussels sprouts prior to gastroparesis.
I'd
And
say we all were, but if I remember correctly, my mom had to force Brussels sprouts down my throat as a kid.
yeah, my mom hated them, but I just like grew this
They're so
affinity to
good.
them in my
They're so
early
good.
20s where I don't know why I was obsessed with them. Like I said, completely different person now. But I pounded the Brussels sprouts, pounded the chicken, and I remember halfway through the meal, I was like, "Ooh, I'm getting full, like, this isn't sitting right," but I was really into my macros, and I was like, I gotta get those gains, I gotta get my protein goal, which is it's really making my stomach turn right now, but I was like, "I gotta get my protein, so I'm just gonna keep eating this even though it feels uncomfortable," and the more I put in my stomach, obviously, the much more uncomfortable it was. It was probably a normal serving of chicken and vegetables, and I was like, "Ooh, this feels like a Thanksgiving dinner. I feel
Yeah.
really, really bloated. What is going on? This must be bad Costco chicken." And so, I remember just sitting there for a couple hours and just being like, "This does not feel good." And eventually I started vomiting the chicken and Brussels sprouts. And I just thought, wow, this must be a bad case of rotisserie chicken from Costco. Not thinking much of it, thinking it just wasn't sitting right. And in a couple days, I'll be better. So a couple days pass, about I think 5 or 6 at this point, and I'm still vomiting, but the vomiting feels different than the stomach flu vomiting, which I was still convinced I had. It spoiler alert, was not the stomach flu,
Mm.
but it just felt like a rejection. I remember my parents forced me to go to the ER, but I was like, I'm fine, I'm fine. I don't need to go to the ER." But they forced me to go to the ER, and I just remember I kept telling the physician's assistant, "It doesn't feel the same as the stomach flu. It feels like a rejection. It feels like there's a blockage in my stomach. I think I have a blockage in my stomach where things just are not going down." And he believed me, thankfully, but he ran all these tests and he thought it was my gallbladder, my appendix, anything like that. And he's like, "I'm very baffled. Maybe you just have an extreme case of the stomach flu, and just these bags of IVs will help. You can stay the night for observation or not," which I said, "No, I do not want to stay the night for observation."
Who wants to?
Next day, yeah, it's literally the worst. What is it? The CDU, that's my
Yeah.
personal least favorite place in the world. I still was vomiting the next day. Um, and so I went back to the ER because he told me to do that if the meds didn't work and the IV bags didn't help. And I fortunately got the same physician's assistant. And he's like, "I honestly am out of any ideas other than this one thing called gastroparesis. We're going to have to do a gastric emptying study the next day. You're going to have to stay the night because we need to make sure that your stomach's empty for the meal the next day. And that was the first time I heard of gastroparesis. I think after that, I went on Google. ChatGPT was not a thing yet. I wish it was. But I went on Google and I remember, typing in like vomiting and all these symptoms, and it came up with food poisoning, stomach flu. And then the very last one, which is like the most niche, the rare one, was gastroparesis, which, at first sight, and I'm sure you did this too, you're like, oh, it can't be that. Like, that's rare. I'm not the rarity, I'm within the bell curve. Like that doesn't happen to me. Um, Spoiler alert, it did. I did the gastric emptying study, and I remember after the study, all these different gastroenterologists came into my room just to kind of study me. I was like, what is going on? Like, I am so normal there
Mhm.
again. Like, why are all these people poking and prodding me right now? And I think, unfortunately, gastroparesis is a lot more normalized with the GLP-1s out in the world. But
Yeah.
5 years ago, gastroparesis was super niche. It was not as talked about, which I'm so grateful for G-PACT really making a conversation out of gastroparesis and bringing it more towards the world and having these conversations and bringing this community together. But 5 years ago, gastroparesis, maybe to my naive mind, really was not a thing anybody was talking about. So I remember just kind of being studied. And the question I'd always get was, do you have diabetes? Which I know a lot of the gastroparesis patients out there have diabetes. I do not. And so the doctors told me, you don't have diabetes. This came on abruptly. This is going to leave within 2 to 3 months, probably 2 months. You're going to take Zofran and Reglan, and you just can't have heavy vegetables like broccoli or the Brussels
No more
sprouts, which
Brussels sprouts.
I know I've been living
You
without
poor
Brussels
thing.
sprouts for almost 5 years now, and it's very sad because I still crave them sometimes. But I do eat Costco chicken sometimes when it's a good gastric emptying day. But yeah, no more Brussels sprouts. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to be that girl with the sensitive tummy who takes her medications,
Yeah.
and just can't eat heavy duty vegetables or big salads or big meals. And in a couple months, this will all be behind me. I remember I had some people in my life tell me that we'll go on a trip and we'll do this magical, once in a lifetime trip once you're better. So like that's your goal, this is the end is near basically, and it's your goal to get better and to get healed, and this will go away and we're going to go on this amazing trip. Um and obviously sitting here advocating for gastroparesis, having this awesome conversation podcast with you. Gastroparesis has not gone away for me, but I've
Yeah.
learned a lot of lessons. I think none of us really wanted to learn, but we've all learned them together. So, um, not happy that you're in this club with me, but thank you for understanding and empathizing with this club.
Yeah. It's a club that, like, I'm glad to have friends in, but I wish none of
Yeah,
us were here.
exactly. Like, I feel so selfish being like, I'm so grateful somebody else understands, but it's like, you don't want somebody else to understand at the same time
Yeah.
because you don't want anybody to go through any sort of semblance of this mess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that isolation and like talking what you were saying a few minutes ago about like what you experience, it's like your whole life changes in a moment and immediately you
Yes.
become isolated and you don't even realize
Yes.
like how isolated it actually is going to get because you get this diagnosis and you're now on an island and you're like, how did I get here? I don't like it here. I want to go home. I don't like this.
Yeah.
This is not the vacation I wanted to be on, right? Like this isn't where I wanted to
This is
be.
not.
And it's difficult the more you go on, and if somebody downplays it a little bit, like, you don't want the doctors to scare you, right?
Yeah.
But to
Yeah.
downplay it like, "Oh, it'll go away. Take your Zofran, take your Reglan, take this, take that. It'll go away in a couple months." It's like, been longer than a few months, my dude. Like,
I know. And I think you just like summed everything up this experience so well of just it's so much more comprehensive than just like my tummy hurts or people think it's just oh you take some Tums and you watch spicy foods and it's so much more than that. affects everything from, like, your social dynamics because I think we all know if you go to a party, you expect eating and drinking, and it just people not being able to understand you or, like, relate to you or your job and how you have to advocate for yourself
Yeah.
in the workspace. I feel like a lot of times, like, I'm very open with everything that's happened to me, but only if I trust you. So, like, people on the street, you don't go up to them and say, like, "Hi, I vomit all day, every day," like, "How's your day?"
Yeah.
So it's yeah, so it's just this very so multifaceted, and
Mhm.
I'm sure your podcast is gonna explore every single facet of that, and I can't wait to listen to more of it because every time I've heard one of your episodes, I'm like, "Oh, I relate to this so well."
Yeah.
A little eerily well.
Yeah, I know. And that's the point, right? And that's why we
Yes.
do this, and that's why we, as a platform are here to talk about these stories and these situations because as much as your story is very unique in some ways, it's also not unique at all in
Yeah.
that we've all been through something that looks like this. And
Yeah.
somebody out there might be at the beginning stages of like what you were talking about where they're like, is this a stomach flu that just never goes away?
Never goes away.
What is this? And they hear, oh, well, you got here. This is the test that you had to run. This is what you did, or these are
Mhm.
the ways that you did a trial and error on your food. Those are the
Yeah.
things that are important for people to hear and to understand, to hear like what were the issues you had after diagnosis, after you got home and you have this thing now and you're trying to figure out what to eat, like what was your next step? What did somebody help you do or not help you do in figuring out how the hell do I live with this thing?
And that was the most daunting part because I remember, getting the Reglan, getting the Zofran, and just thinking that, like, I can't eat broccoli and crazy big steaks and just going home and being so heartbroken because I was still vomiting on these medications. And I started reading The Living Well with Gastroparesis
Mhm.
by Crystal Sartrelli. And
Mhm.
we quote her so much in my house. It's probably really
She
scary
is
she's
a
listening to
household name.
this. She really is, like, anybody with gastroparesis, like, please read her if you haven't. And it was so helpful because I was like, "Okay, so she did this, she didn't do this, like, she had these medications," and it really is, like, not to diminish the Bible, but, like, it really feels like it's, like, the gastroparesis Bible for me, and, like, we would quote it in my house, like, First Corinthians, like, First Crystal Sartrelli, she says to do this. And I remember one of the biggest things that the doctors would always tell me, because I eventually went to the Cleveland Clinic for this, and they're like, have liquids, you need to have liquids, like, that's the best way to digest." And I remember just throwing up the liquids and being like, "What am I doing wrong?" And, through a lot of trial and error, solids actually work better for me. It's a lot of rice and it's a lot of eggs because they seem to be more weighted in my stomach. So my stomach doesn't want to reject them as easily. And
Mhm.
rice is obviously, fortunately, a very stomach friendly food to eat. So learn that. The Cleveland Clinic also gave me erythromycin instead of Reglan because I was a zombie on Reglan. It did not really work for me. I was very high and I couldn't even drive because I
Yeah.
was on the maximum dose. And I know we've talked about this prior. Neither of us, obviously, everybody's body is different. Some people, Reglan is a miracle worker, but for you and I, it was not a good fit, and erythromycin was a lot more helpful. So for anybody who hasn't tried erythromycin, I would definitely suggest for you to talk to your doctor potentially about doing that. Or still to this day, if I get a really bad flare up and they always suggest Reglan at the hospital, I'm like, no, erythromycin, 100%. It's more powerful for me. It's less side effects.
Mhm.
I liked that medication a lot more. But with that being said, I went to a lot of different specialists because I have an amazing, amazing, amazing local gastroenterologist. He's like my best friend. If and when I get married, like he's getting invited. Um, like he's getting an invitation. He's family. But I went to these big box super specialists, as a lot of us have, at the Cleveland Clinic, who routed me over to the Medical College of Georgia because I am in Atlanta. Um, and I went to a super specialist who ran extensive amounts of tests on me, from breath tests to the gastric baristat test, which I don't have you had that one?
Mm-mm.
It is wild. They basically I have, like, selfies. I was, like, Snapchatting people because it was so funny. They, like, put a balloon down your esophagus all the way into your stomach, and then they have, like, varying degrees of pressure in the balloon, and they
No, thank
measure
you.
the pressure of your
No, thank
stomach.
you. Mm-mm.
It was
No, thanks.
horrible.
No,
No
thank you.
thanks, yeah. Not on the bucket list.
No.
And so
Mm-mm.
they said my stomach was extremely sensitive, like, I remember 'cause they'll tell you, like, "You have to let us know, like, your tap out zone for
Yeah.
this, on the balloon pressure," and I was at, like, level 6, and I think there was 21 levels, and I was like, "Absolutely, like, no more."
Yeah.
So extremely sensitive stomach. I think a lot of us have hypersensitivity,
Mhm.
as well as, additional gastric emptying study tests and everything done. Um, I'm not as extreme as a lot of patients with the fact that I was about 25% retention at 4 hours. Granted, I didn't eat the entire meal because
Mhm.
I knew I'd vomit if I ate anymore. So I just made sure I ate the eggs. So with all these tests, it finally validated everything from a big box guy who had a lot of credentials, and I was able to get on domperidone. I tried way too many medications, from anti anxiety to antidepressive medications to anything that would help with the visceral sensitivity because I seem to have a lot a lot of visceral sensitivity. Those medications weren't amazing for me. Because they're like, "Try" I don't remember the word, but it's not like a typical SSRI, it's like a very old class of antidepressants, and I remember saying, like, "I don't feel right on these. I have a
Yeah.
very sensitive nervous system," and I was getting panic attacks on them. They're like, "No, no, no, like, it shouldn't cause that," and I finally got off of them and the panic attacks stopped. So one of my biggest pieces of advice when you're taking all these different pills, from Reglan to erythromycin to Zofran to domperidone to, the psychological ones, is you know your body best.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and, I think all of us gaslight ourselves so much into being like, "I must be dramatic," or "This medication is probably working, but I just, like, mentally don't want it to work," or "I don't wanna get better." Maybe that's it, like, at a subconscious level, and it's not that, like,
Yeah.
you you know your body better
Yeah.
than anybody else.
It is. It's
Um,
difficult. And you've got some other diagnoses as well that came in the next, like, few steps for finding out some other issues, right? That
yeah.
all also impact your gut and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, you know, anybody with chronic illness, I think you kind of peel back one of the layers and all these additional layers come out of it because it's, again, so layered. So getting the blood tests done, they saw that I had an active and a previous Epstein-Barr virus. So it was theorized by the best um, educated guess from the super specialist that the COVID vaccine re-triggered the di- Epstein-Barr virus in me, re-triggered that, attacked my nerves, and I also found out I had HEDS, which
Hmm.
is, I think, a lot more talked about now, or maybe my algorithm is suited towards that. It
It's
could
a
be
little bit of
both.
both, little bit of both.
Yeah, it's definitely being a lot more talked about, which I think is great, but he was like, "Oh, can you, do the thumb thing where you do
Mhm.
this, and you, like, touch your toes in this way," and I was like, "Oh, yeah, my shoulders always pop out of my socket, but that's just, like, my party trick," and he's
Mhm.
like, "Okay, well, because you
It's
have
not a party
Ehlers-Danlos
trick.
syndrome." It is, it's cool. Um, but because you have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome on top of everything, this has made it a much more sticky case. So from there, I basically the gastroparesis kind of leveled up, I guess you could say. I was having more frequent flare-ups. I was going and being hospitalized about once a quarter, so once every 3 months. I would know everybody in the hospital. I think a lot of us probably know everybody in the
Yeah.
hospital where you go to the same one, you're like, "Hey,
Mhm.
Jerry, it's the IV tech," like,
Yeah. Yeah, you get on a
or they'd be
first
like,
name
"Baxter?"
basis real
Yeah,
easy. When I've gone in, I'm like, "I need Manny. He's the best with the IVs.
yeah.
Where is he?" Like, "If he's not
It really
coming,
is
no one's
true.
touching me. Sorry. I'll wait."
It's It's so true, because like, especially, the more IVs you get, the more scar tissue you get on your veins, so you're like, "I really need Manny, and I really need this, and, like, he's my guy." So, I was going and getting hospitalized, obviously more than anybody wants, but fortunately, my local gastroenterologist was like, "Okay, we're gonna try Botox and just see if it works," and the Botox did help. I thought, in my head, my fantasized head, if I get Botox, everything's going to be magically cured. That was not the case, but it was able to get me out of the hospital. Probably that's why it was happening quarterly. I remember because Botox lasts 3 to 4 months, which was
Makes sense.
the typical time span for me. And I'd always make the joke of like, oh, I'm going to go see my Botox specialist, like, and everything. And people were like, what are you talking about, Helena?
Yeah.
Um, but, you get that dark humor the longer you have all these conditions. So I would see my Botox specialist, my local gastroenterologist, and we would notice trends. Sometimes the Botox would metabolize faster, and I would be in the hospital sooner than regularly scheduled.
Yeah.
Um, and so I remember because I used to be a data analyst, and honestly, you don't have to be a data analyst to know this, but every 3 months I would be hospitalized, and it would be about the time that the Botox would metabolize. And I remember telling that to the super specialist, being like, hey, I think the Botox is working for me. Um, I'm metabolizing it, and then I have to go back into the hospital, be hospitalized for, almost a week. And then once the Botox kicks in, like I can be discharged. And it was more of, no, that doesn't happen. I don't like the Botox. Like, it's just because you're basically stabilizing yourself in the hospital and you're able to get out of there because of that. And I remember just, it was not sitting right with me, that whole statement, because I was like, this keeps happening. And it was like, no, 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 that's the Botox isn't working. It's not doing anything. I don't know why your local gastroenterologist is doing that. Um, so finally, when talking to the super specialist, I remember I had my dad come in with me. I think we've also talked about this a fair amount. It's really good to have a man come in with you, which is unfortunate, but it's true because I think a lot of times, and unfortunately, the assumption is, oh, if it's a woman saying that this is happening, she must be dramatic or over exaggerating or like PMSing or
Yeah.
anything like that. But if you have a man come in, you automatically, one, it triangulates your experience. And then two, yeah, you get validated because men can't be dramatic. So this must be legit.
Mhm.
And I remember my dad, this is so bad, but he was just like imitating my vomiting. And he's like, I'm going to get like an Oscar award for this. I'm like, oh my God. Um, but he was imitating my vomiting to the super specialist. And I was like, can you please stop? And then the super specialist finally
Dads.
listened to me and was like, okay, let's get you the gastric pacemaker.
Mhm.
And I remember I just started like crying in the office. And I'm not that big of a crier. Maybe now I've become a lot more sensitive, but I'm not that big of a crier. And I just start bawling in this man's office because like somebody was taking me seriously and somebody was like willing to like go further than just like the standard and honestly non-standard medications
Mhm.
for gastroparesis. And I was so excited. Like I had a countdown like till the day of surgery and I so excited for the gastric pacemaker. Um, at the time, there is nobody in the state of Georgia who did the gastric pacemaker surgery. So I had to go to the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. Super interesting trip driving down there because our tire got completely shredded and I had to get Uber after Uber all the way from Charleston from Atlanta, which is, um, about a 6-hour drive.
Wow. You really
But
wanted that
real
pacemaker.
I no, I remember because I was like, "This pacemaker, I need to be at the hospital at 6 AM." I was like, "We are getting there no matter what, like, we are not having this, like, go awry, like, I am getting that damn pacemaker." And just all these, like, kind strangers were helping out, like, the hotel manager from the Holiday Inn we were staying at in North Charleston was like, "I'll drive you, like, I can help you out, I can pick
Gosh,
you up."
that's so
Like,
sweet. Yeah.
it's so sweet, like, I don't know if you've had this, but just the amount of strangers and just like your close friends, like it can feel very isolating with this condition and, the other comorbidities with this condition. But um, it can just be so touching and so meaningful when like your inner circle or a friend of a friend or even a random stranger is just like willing to help you out with no benefit towards themselves.
We're going to pause the story here, but stay tuned for part two.